Hello, hello, and happy Monday. Welcome to a Money Monday with Purse Strings. My name is Maggie, and I am a partner of Purse Strings. For those of you who are new here, we are all about providing um, tools, resources, tips, tricks, all about being financially fearless. And then when you're ready to, get a will, start investing, hire a coach, sell a house, buy a house, whatever financial transition or transaction you're going to go through. We have top tier financial professionals willing, ready, and able to serve you. We call those our Purse Strings approved professionals. And today we have a Purse Strings approved professional on with us today talking about if this year you're going to quit your job. But before we get into all that fun, could we get a little intro of who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Jeannie Dougherty. I am a money expert and mental fitness guide and I work with professionals that want a career change without going into debt. And I help them create a personalized 90-day cash infusion plan. So I run money coaching boot camps.
Awesome. And did you say cash infusion plan?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Means make money.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I haven't heard that term, but I love it.
Well, that's what, when people were like, I need to find a way to make more money. Well, you need your cash to get infused into your daily life, into your budget.
It's very true. It's very true. So yeah, we're excited to have you on today and talk about, if this year one of your goals is to quit your job, whether that be, starting to get into retirement, whether that be, building your own, putting out your own shingle, or just headed in a different direction. Quitting your job can be really scary. And so we're going to have this whole conversation today. And if anyone's tuning in and has any questions, just pop them in the chat. We're happy to help answer them. And if you're watching the replay, you can also pop them in the chat and we'll work on getting those back to you. So let's dive in. Let's just start with some, top maybe considerations we should be thinking about if you're going to quit your job. What are some of the main things that we should really be bringing into consideration?
So I love it when people finally decide like they're going to actually step away from maybe what was safe or secure, or maybe, the position is ending, but now it's time for them to actually go after that dream, and it's time for them to move forward. Because I've worked with people who, are doctors who become lawyers, lawyers who become doctors, engineers who become teachers. I think you get it. People move in different directions when it comes to their career because their heart and soul sometimes just moves them in a different direction. It's time to do something different. So I would say the most important thing is, number one is, do you know what are your fixed costs? What are your fixed expenses? Do you know what it's like when you have a little bit more in terms of your expenditures? Because one way to kind of prepare yourself for a possible career transition is to start to save up more money and start adding more savings into the savings account. Because the thing that nobody tells you is that in order to make a career transition, it can be one of the most costly things before retirement that you're going to do.
Mm-hmm. And what makes it so costly? Because that's not something that I would assume right away.
Right. So, a lot of times it requires new schooling. Sometimes it requires maybe a certification program, or if you're going to be starting a business, you're going to have to maybe work your way towards making the black, meaning getting yourself there so you have, consistent income. And that might take you some time. So sometimes what people do is they will pull money out of their 401ks, or, if it's some type of, early retirement account, there's nothing wrong with that. But you've got to know where you want to go if you want to start to save for the future, because it's okay if you're going to retire 5 or 10 years later. That's totally fine. It's totally doable. But it's just a question of, are you financially and mentally prepared for that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think those are great 2 points that you bring in. It's not only financially prepared, but mentally prepared as well, which I think is where a coach could be super helpful, because it is both sides that really take that to get to that success.
Yeah. And one of the things too is that, if you know what your fixed costs are, it's really important to just stay aware of, is there any way you can possibly streamline that a little bit or get some small discounts? It's not because you're necessarily made more money, but you are reducing your expenses. And that's really important, because the longer you can sort of understand what you think your current budget is, the easier it will be to plan for a future budget, which is, once I'm no longer employed here, what do I think my finances and what do I think my budget is going to look like? And I always refer to this as sort of the magic of your winning money power, which isn't all that magical. We're actually all born with it. But, if you don't know how to harness that consistently, that becomes a big problem.
Right. And so could you give a quick definition of what fixed cost really is?
So how much is your rent? How much does it cost to put gas in your car every month? And meaning you need to go to certain places. So you do need to have gas in your car. How much are your groceries? How much is your takeout? What are all of your, what I call subscription costs? Your insurance? It's what I would say the difference between a want and a need. You got to know that.
Got it. Yep. So knowing your fixed cost before you leave your job is super important, and making sure that you, like you said, have your emergency savings kind of bulked up to make sure it's covering those fixed costs.
Yeah. And it's also really important to know how long you can do your, what I call your fixed cost. How long do you have enough money saved up, maybe padded, before what I call, unfortunately, it's the financial erosion of your assets. So again, when are you going to start running out of money, do you think? And that's actually a good question to have in your head, because if you already know that answer, then you're going to be more proactive. Because the truth is, with money, we have to be proactive. When we're like, then usually financial calamity will show up, and then we're going to have to really, work hard to try to fix it. But I highly, highly recommend it when people kind of know how long they've got some cash to keep them going. And then, what's it going to take in order to get to this future budget? And when people have those questions answered, then they can move on to the next step.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And so if you are planning, let's say, I don't know, it seems like people plan more 3-ish months before they might leave their job, and to really get a solid plan in place. What are some steps that you should put in place in those 90 days, pre leaving your job and that consistent paycheck?
Yeah, so this is one of those things that has really nothing to do so much with the money, but really bringing in what I would call sort of the collateral assets, which is, does everyone know that you're going to be, leaving your job, or is this a surprise? Does everyone know, what are you good at in terms of your skills? Do you have a current resume, which I know people sometimes like groan and want to stomp their feet because they don't want to create one. But the truth is, a lot of times we get small jobs or side jobs or a new job, if that's absolutely necessary, by the people we know.
Yeah.
So one of the free, easy things I recommend is to, get yourself all nice and polished as at least a placeholder on LinkedIn, which is free. If you want another job or you want another career going in a different direction, clicking on so that, headhunters and, recruiters can find you is an easy thing. But, let's say you're not on LinkedIn and that's just not your jam. It's not your thing. So then on Facebook, you can join free groups. Yep. You can notify people that possibly work in the field you'd like to go, and maybe, ask them for 15, 20 minutes of their time to find out, how did they do that? Why do you want to do that? Because when you are able to show people, I'm really interested, I'm really serious, I'm going to go do this. So for instance, if you're going to switch careers and you're going to become a nurse, yes, the curriculum's there, getting into school is there, but why don't you talk to people who survived this pandemic? Why don't you find out what kind of nursing you think you'd be good at? What else would you like to have, in terms of knowledge, in terms of a network? Because none of us really get through life all by ourselves. It really is a network of people.
We always say your network is almost your net worth, because you need all these people to kind of help get you to where you want to go. So many jobs are filled by, referrals or, recommendations from inside people. And so it is important to have those connections. And I also think sometimes when you talk to people who have these different positions, you really learn what the day-to-day is like, or what is that really what you want to do? Because, like for the example of nursing, it might look great from what but what are the dirty details that no one are telling you that you want to know before you dive in 2 feet first?
Yeah. I mean, and one client in particular I'm thinking of is they wanted to become they were an engineer, which, they had already paid for all their schooling, thank goodness. They had a house, they had a very nice life, but then they wanted to become a teacher, like a middle school teacher. And you're like, are you prepared for the adjustment in income? How the heck are all the bills going to get paid? You're a dual income family. You have been the breadwinner. And I got to tell you, the person did not think about that at all. They were like, oh, well, money will come in. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not going to be anywhere near the salary that you're used to with the benefits that you've had. It's totally different, paying system. And they were like, oh my gosh, because most teachers I know work 2 to 3 jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of patience.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a great tip to start, is to get your resume polished up, LinkedIn, Facebook, start reaching out to people in that, in those 90 days before you leave your position.
Yes. And then the other thing, what I want to say is, let's say you're going to start and go back to school, which I think is fantastic. A lot of people have part-time or just what I call side hustle money, which is actually a really good thing. That's a good way to actually execute what I call good money skills and good money thoughts. Because I have met more people who've had what I would say an interesting roadmap to, getting to their financial success, whether it was owning their own business or becoming a doctor. But the fact that they did all these other little jobs along the way, anywhere from dishwasher to dog walker,
Yeah.
is, how they made ends meet, because they were determined. They knew where they were going. They weren't guessing, and they weren't like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like, well, what are your marketable skills? And if you don't like dogs and you don't like washing the dishes, I don't blame you. What else can you do? A lot of times people start a side hustle and then they're like, whoa, this is kind of a big business here. Then you get to make a choice. Do you want to keep the side hustle? Or do you want to make it a business because you really want to do this because that's where your heart is?
Right. Right. And it's important to really take a look, because it's a big commitment sometimes. A side hustle, at some points you can drop easily or whatever that may be if you're just working for somebody else. But if you're going to take that on as your full business, are you wanting to put all your time and your energy into that area of whatever it may be? How much do you really love dogs and want to pick up poop day in, day out, winter, spring, summer, and fall?
Yes.
I mean, because then it turns into a big thing. After doing it one season in the summer, you might think it's great, but once it hits 20 degrees out, do you still love this job?
Right, exactly. The people I know who've been really successful had no problem doing a side hustle job or a part-time job because they knew where they were going.
Right.
So they walked in, they were clear on their purpose, they were going to get a paycheck, they were going to do their best, and they moved on. I just had a conversation the other day with a doctor. He's actually, he's at the top of his game now, and he's looking towards a healthy retirement. And he's like, oh yeah, he's like, in school I had to wash dishes, and then like he dog walked, and then he did all these other odds and end jobs. And you're like, why did you do that? He's like, well, I had my loans, I knew what my expenses were, I needed cash. I couldn't get it from my parents because he was over 25. And so there you go. That's somebody who knew what their career, their financial map looks like, instead of like, who can Venmo me on Twitter? It's like, okay.
Tell me that's not the best plan.
So for some people, that's what they do. They just put their I'm having a hard time. Can you send me some cash? Right. And sometimes they will get some money, but that's not going to be a consistent stream of income.
Right. You need to hold the power in your own hands, and that's just not relying on others. So whether that's getting a side hustle or whatever that may be to make the ends meet, it's really important. And I think it's, sometimes I think people feel shame about it, and there should be no shame about it. You're doing what needs to be done, and that's invigorating and empowering. And like you said, your end goal. So, this is the path that's going to get you there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. What other things should you do in those 90 days before you leave your job?
So I always say, if you can get maybe some letters of recommendations, or even better, again, if you're going into another career, that's helpful. But even better, to find out, why do people think you're good at your job? Like, what is it that they always look forward to? And that's outside of, like, let's say you do something what might seem really simple, which is data entry. Well, you've got really fast fingers. But what if it's really something else, that maybe you're dependable, you're reliable, you're honest, you like getting the work done, you have all this energy, like all of a sudden you realize that you're more than just the identity of this job position, right, whatever it may be, and that you actually have a lot more worth and value, which can really save you down the road when you're like maybe having a hard day. Why am I doing this? What am I good at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's different things than you'd always see on what they want on the job qualifications of being able to know how to type in numbers and make an equation on Excel. Right. I mean, it's that, but how to show up on time and be dependable, and when to ask questions and how to get those things done, which are can't just always learn in the textbook.
Right. And let's face it, you can be taught just about any sort of on the job skill, but right, true, character, true passion, true mission starts here.
Definitely. These are all great tips, just in case you are thinking about leaving your job, because you do need to have all these different things prepared, before you dive into that next piece of work.
definitely.
Let me see if there's any questions coming in. If anyone's tuning in and have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And so what does a coach like you help? How do you help in this kind of transition?
So I specialize with people who are making that career transition. So again, it could be, to starting their own business, which I've done. So I know, actually I've started 2 businesses, so I know exactly what that's like. But I also know what it's like to just want to get a better job and how that can take time. But the thing I would say is that what people sometimes forget is going to school may interfere with your ability to make money from a job. So you've got to look at the different ways you can continue to make money, which is why I call it a cash infusion program, not go stand on the street and go beg for it or go ask your parents for it, which can actually impact their retirement. It's just, no, it's like, we got to do this a little differently.
Definitely. And so you help them then kind of make a plan to either kind of figure out their finances in this interim.
Yes. So the whole point of getting what I call a customized, money roadmap is so that you can figure out, where are your places where you actually have some serious potholes, and how you can start to, maybe feel a little bit of them, but also learn to avoid them. Because when you can avoid the potholes on your own financial roadmap, this is going to save you a lot of time and money. And then you can actually go, oh, and this is how I actually, well, if I want to make more money, how do I do that? If I want to reduce my debt, how do I want to do that? If I need to have a little more courage and polish in talking to people, how am I going to learn how to do that? That's just a skill,
right?
Not necessarily an innate talent.
And so one question that I see here is kind of, this fear of not being able to fund, let's say, your retirement during this interim, or you don't know when that funding can start again. And if you're, over 50, kind of reaching closer to that retirement, it can feel more impactful. What are your recommendations around this, either around the fear or how to kind of grasp, around not being able to fund that for some time?
So sometimes what I encourage people to think about is that, let's say, we'll use the example of being a nurse. Let's say you're over 50 and you really want to become a nurse. You think it would be a great career for you. You'd really like to do it. You may not always have to be fully hands-on as a nurse, because nurses have different jobs. Right. Some of them do work from behind a computer, so that might be healthy for you. But if that's something you really want, then what some people do is they get what I call a little bit radical. They maybe look at, okay, I own a home, but maybe I'm going to sell it, so I'll have a little extra cash and less expenses. And maybe they're going to go live with a family member if that's what they want. Other people are like, nope, I'm going to find another way to do this. I'm going to find some part-time work, and then I'm going to pull in renters. Again, these are choices, if you're over 50. I've known some people, what they do is they get better at their investing. That's something that not everyone talks about, because it sounds like you're doing more high risk. And I would say, well, it depends on what you're trying to do with your investing. There's all kinds of things outside of crypto that you can invest in. So again, those are choices. And sometimes, money just comes because you didn't work at all. Meaning sometimes an inheritance shows up, occasionally, rarely, the lotto shows up. But I mean, like, sometimes money will come to you and this is a good thing. And then you go, oh my gosh, look at this. I got money for that. Let's go do this. Okay, I've got money for that.
Right. Definitely. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you never know where you might find money, and you have to be open to it and really abundant in that mindset.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just watching this on TV, and I thought this was streamed it. Did I watch it on TV? I streamed it. But I thought this was a great example of putting money, investing in somebody's skill for the future. There's a little boy. His family came from Africa, and he is autistic, but he just has this gorgeous talent to play piano. He's just like, he has the ear, he has the skill, and he can play, and he can sing. And so his family had recorded him, put a little bit on social media. But there was a gentleman, sort of, if you will, in the network, but that nobody really thought of, that saw this kid's talent and actually brought him a baby grand piano, had it set up in the house, and offered to tune it every month for free until he dies. And the man's in his 60s. And he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to make this kid a success. That is investing in you. And that's what I mean by getting to know your network. Because if you've got people who are like, wait, you're 50, but you really look like you're 35, and you've got all this energy and you want to become a nurse and this is your passion, let's do it this way. Or maybe you get a free ticket to go to a women's event, and then you go, wait a minute, I could do it this way. You're following your passion. You're following your roadmap without liquidating your assets and feeling absolutely afraid of everything in front of you.
You got to talk about it. You got to put it out there, because if I were to learn anything from all the women that I work with, is everybody is really there to help you lift you up whatever way you can, whether that be, I know a girlfriend who's in nursing who could, I haven't talked to her in 5 years, but let me connect you to,
Yeah.
Whoever it may be, you just have to start putting it out there and letting the universe almost do its thing, because there's so much that might happen.
Right.
And it's not always the person that you think of as well. So you have to really put it out there and make sure you're having these conversations, because you never know what might come of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like we've covered a lot of great information in just such a short amount of time. Is there any other tips, tricks, pieces of advice you want to make sure is shared with the audience today?
Sure. One of the things I like to remind people about money is that roughly money scarcity or fear of I'm not going to make the bills, I'm never going to get here, I'm never going to do that, lives on one side of your brain, which is roughly the left side of your brain. And what happens is that when we grow up, we learn everything from the left side of our brain about money.
Okay.
It takes training to get us to the right side. The right side can actually figure out where the money's coming from, can actually, who else do I need to call or talk to this week? This is the one that's the positive and, the willingness to get there. We can do this. This is not going to kill me. And I call that your winning money power. And so that's exactly what I do in my money boot camp, is that I train men and women who are I need to find a way I can be consistent accessing my winning money power instead of only thinking of it when there's a money crisis, which then is
right.
Oh, I'm still on my left side of the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this set up as a group coaching, or
yeah,
it's a group coaching?
It's a group coaching. Occasionally some people want to work with me one-on-one, and that's fine. But yeah, the whole process is 10 weeks long. It's amazing what you can do when you put your mind and your money to it. All of a sudden you'll be I have a totally different new brain, and I have new cash flow, and now I know what I need to do when it comes to my financial, situation, whatever it may be.
Sounds like a great step to take, before you step out of the workforce or whatever position you're in, to really get yourself aligned for this next step in life.
Yeah, because your financial confidence can never be bought. When you know what you're worth, you know how to make money, you do not scare. People can't scare you. The economy can't scare you.
And we need that today.
Yes, we do.
Because it is a wild ride out there.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on today and providing all these great tips and tricks about, getting our resume prepared, LinkedIn prepared, having these conversations, knowing your fixed expenses. These are all great tips, if you're getting ready to, wanting to retire, or if you're just starting your next leg of your life. These are all great pieces of advice. So I know that your email's been going down through the bottom, and your Purse Strings Approved Professional, so you guys can check her out at pursestrings.co. Is there any other way that you'd like people to reach out to you?
Well, they can certainly, reach out to me here on Facebook. I'll definitely put my comment, my name in the comment in my business, page. But, besides my email, they can always check out my website. They can actually hop on my calendar directly from my website.
Awesome. That sounds great. So don't be afraid to make a call. I'm sure you have, a free 20-minute conversation just to figure out if it's a good fit, when to get started, all these good things. And so let's make 2023 the year of financial fearlessness.
Yes.
So you're ready to quit your job. Let's take some action and really make it a great year. So thank you again for coming on today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.